Today on Inspired Money.
Success is 100% about control. Control of where we live, control of my time, control of how much money I want to make, control of my day, control of what I'm going to do next week or what I'm going to do next year. That's it.
This is episode 106 with host of Hack the Entrepreneur, Jonny Nastor. Welcome to Inspired Money. My name is Andy Wong, a managing partner at Runnymede Capital Management. Each week, we bring you an interesting person to help you get inspired, shift your perspectives on money, and achieve incredible things. From making it to giving it away, Inspired Money means making a difference, creating something bigger than oneself, and maybe, just maybe, making the world a better place. Thank you for joining me. Hey, Inspired Moneymaker, welcome back. If it's your first time listening, welcome. Today we're talking to Jonny Nastor. If you do not know him, he's host of the popular Hack the Entrepreneur podcast, where he's interviewed guests like Seth Godin, Guy Kawasaki, and James Altucher. He's a great guest for us to explore entrepreneurship because not only has he interviewed nearly 500 entrepreneurs, but he's one himself. He's built multiple businesses that have afforded him more time with his family and to be location independent. If you listened to Inspired Money episodes 99 and 100, where I invited Jared Morris on because he helped teach me about launching a podcast, Jonny is the other half of the Showrunner podcast, Course and Community. So Jonny has also had a hand in shaping Inspired Money to what it is today. In this episode, you'll learn putting a successful team together and why it's a bad idea to give yourself 80% ownership just because you came up with the idea, the importance of building an audience for your business, and working through imposter syndrome. I think you'll enjoy Jonny's stories and business lessons. Now let's get inspired with Jonny Nastor. Jonny Nastor, welcome to Inspired Money. It's so great to have you on the show.
It is all my pleasure. All my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
Early grade school, so probably like grade 1 or 2, getting like 50 cents and getting to go to the candy store and buy like these little 1-cent candies. They were like sour and they were literally 1 cent each. And at the time, there wasn't even taxes on them. And this is talking from Canada where there's lots of taxes. And so you could literally get 50 little candies and they would wrap them in this little plastic bag for you. That's my earliest memory of it. And it makes me sad because now candies are like 10 cents each, the minimum.
Well, Jonny, I'm so excited to have you on the show. One, because as one half of Showrunner, you've had a direct impact on the creation of this show and kind of sculpting it as I've gone along. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. But we have had no hand in the success of it. That's all you.
Well, success, I don't know. It's very subjective. But yes, thank you. I keep hitting record and hopefully good things happen.
That's all we can ask for on a podcast.
So I've heard you call yourself unemployable. What does that mean?
I can't get my head around the idea of not having full responsibility for my outcomes. I completely work for myself. I have for like 15 years, I think, probably somewhere in there at this point. And there was a time in the first few years of like doing my own thing where things would start to go really wrong, which they still do to this day, don't get me wrong. But it used to like affect me to the initial thought was always like, I should just go get a job. I should go get a job again. I should go work for somebody else. There's a cool company I could work for. And then there was something in there, maybe around year 3 or something or 4. It's hard to pinpoint, where that just doesn't happen anymore, like ever. Like that's not the solution to anything for me. That's not even something that it's gone so far now that it's actually unreasonable. And I know that I would be a terrible employee. And so then it would go so far as to just be the fact that I've somehow made myself unemployable at this point, not through skills or anything, just through sheer mindset and the fact that I need the control. I need the control of the outcomes. Even like when they're bad, I want control. I want it to be my fault. And when they're good, I want them to be because of me.
In those first 3 or 4 years, is that a muscle that you've strengthened, or is it a case of learning from the mistakes that you've made?
I like to think I learned from my mistakes, but I know that I don't always. It's distance in some way, like just the further you get from working for somebody. And to me, business and work it's just a part of, like, it's intertwined with almost every aspect of my life. I mean, I work from home. It's hard for me to separate those. So it's like distance mentally, but then also physically, like just through time, where after a few years, it's kind of just like there is a time at the beginning where you're unemployable just because you don't have those skills anymore, because you've gone off and done other things. And then it's so far behind you. Like, I can't even picture what that would entail, like going to work for somebody, or, you know what I mean? So it's time, it's place, it's mindset. It's all of that just the distance between me as an employee and me as like an employer or entrepreneur is they're too vast at this point. I mean, I'm sure I could put in the work and figure it out, but there's no reason why I ever would.
For context, what kind of regular day jobs did you have, and what was your first working for yourself business?
So this was really early. I mean, I was young when I had jobs. So, I mean, like through high school, I worked in like kitchens and stuff, like a kid does. I worked at like a ski hill making snow overnight. I live in Canada. And then I got into construction a bit. Like my dad like built houses and stuff. So I worked with him. And so he had a business. And so I saw it there. But I obviously was not the boss in any way. Then I moved across the country, and because I wanted to be in a band, but then I also needed to work. And so I did work just in some like construction jobs there, because one thing, you could look like you were in a band and still get hired. I had the skills, and it paid quite well for the minimal amount of work that was involved. And I did that across the country for less than a year before I was just like, I should just be doing this myself. I shouldn't be working for these people. And then I just went from there. So I started a construction company, and I grew that out in Vancouver until we decided, well, we had a kid, and then we decided we wanted to sell our house in Vancouver and sold the business and moved back across the country. So it was construction a lot of the time at the beginning. And then I got into like a fireworks business for a bit. Then once I sold the offline stuff, that's when I was like, I need to figure out how to do this online, because I'm spending way too much time away from my daughter. She was like 1 year old, and I was like, this sucks. I don't want to do this.
I heard that the fireworks storing in your daughter's bedroom was not the best idea.
That still comes up at family dinners. It's hard to believe the grandmas really took that one to heart. It seemed innocent enough at the time. I was young. Everything turned out fine. But yeah, well, the fireworks were there first. Then the kid came, and that was the storage room. It happened to be the second bedroom.
At some point, you got into different software businesses. I know that you did like a WordPress plugin, but interestingly, you're not a coding guy. How did you take that leap? Like, you came up with an idea, but you knew how to put the pieces together.
It's debatable whether I knew how to put the pieces together. But I mean, it could be argued, Andy, because I knew how to put the big pieces like the people who knew how to do things together. I don't think innately within me, but I think it's something I learned. It was sort of bred into me from like with my dad, I guess. And then it's something that I've always been fascinated with, which is sales, persuasion, selling, being able to get what I want is something that I still to this day, I read about it. I'm really, really into it, and not for like selfish reasons, but just because it's like, if there's something that I think needs to exist in the world, it's obvious that there's nobody, I don't think, in this world that knows how to do the whole aspect of something, creating it, promoting it, getting it out there, selling it, supporting it. Like there's people who think they can do all of it and they do really crappy versions of some parts of it. If I have an idea, then I find people that I think would be good together to make this work, and then I sell the idea to them. And then I'm sort of like the sales marketing side of it. There's a lot of developers out there that aren't good at that, and they know that. There's people who are really good at like content creation and stuff, and they're not good at software. It's like there's these people who are sort of like in separate sections of what a business needs to grow and to build product. I just have had the ability to, or the luck maybe too, and the I guess the confidence just to go out and ask the right people sometimes, and without a fear of like, oh, maybe they'll say no. It's like, well, yeah, maybe they will, but how do I possibly know that if I don't ask? I've just done that. It's never been something that would ever in any way hold me up because the fact that I don't know how to code. Do you know what I mean? Because there's millions of people that know how to code, and there's millions of people that know how to market and sell. But putting those people together is a different thing. So I just do it.
As an entrepreneur, are you always looking for that gap, like the idea to fill some need?
Yes and no. In my younger years, yes, I always was. And it became a distraction. So now I am, but not in a sense, I guess not with a sense of urgency like I used to, in the sense that I'm not instantly like, that needs to be built, I'm going to build it. I don't do that anymore. I don't have the time. I don't have the inclination. And it didn't help me. Well, it maybe did. I mean, I guess it did. It got me where I am. It's not something I want to continue doing. But yeah, there's gaps everywhere, and it fascinates me. It fascinates me the businesses that people create out of the tiniest thing that I would think that nobody would even like care about, and they've created an amazing business out of it, just satisfying that need or filling that gap. That to me is fascinating. That's amazing. And it gets easier, obviously, with time as just technology enables it. That's the thing, is that if you can fill that gap or find that gap in any market, anywhere, which they're endlessly around you, or just like when you're on your laptop all day or on your phone doing something. And there's always that frustration sort of lingering there of things that aren't working how you want, even though you're not aware of it. But when you start becoming aware of those things and being like, why can't I do that on my phone? It's like, well, how would that happen? And not technically, if you're not a technical person, but just be like, well, what if there's an app that did this and could make that happen? I don't know all the 150,000 steps in between, but that should maybe exist. And then look into how that could possibly work. Those are gaps. Those are things that that are there bothering you. Like it's the reason why you use every app you do. It's the reason why you use every program on your computer. It's the reason why you have every piece of clothing on. It specifically fills a need for you. And somebody found that gap, found you as a customer, and now they're possibly living on a beach somewhere because of it.
I'm still fascinated that since you're not a coder, but like you've developed software, I know that there are like countless developers out there. Are they hard to find in your experience?
They're hard to find good ones. There's endless developers. Any developer, I think almost any developer that I've hired strictly to build a piece of software has been off of Upwork.com. That's literally where I've hired every developer I've ever hired. With like the WordPress plugin and stuff, that was a partnership, 100%. I picked somebody out of the WordPress ecosystem. He like actually makes WordPress itself. And I was just like, that guy, I want to build it with him, because he's already got a huge part of like the market knows him because he builds WordPress. He's one of the top guys. And so I just approached him. That's how we did that one. But anytime I've needed to hire a developer per se, it's always just Upwork. There's other ones. There's Freelancer. There's Fiverr. All those things. Again, this is what I mean when I say that it's getting easier because of technology, because we have access to all of these people. And it's not even that you have access to people, but they're really well built marketplaces. Like, go to Upwork. You can sort by only people with 90% like success rates are higher, only people that are within this price range, only people. It's like you can literally find It's like, wow, like this person's done 1,000 other jobs and there's 99% of the people are super happy with it. It's like, okay, well, that kind of gives me some confidence. So those things are there. Like I mean, the Mark Zuckerbergs, the anybody, they're not coders per se. I mean, maybe they built like little tiny versions of the beginning one, but they don't do it. That's not how things are typically built. You have to fit in there somehow, I guess, is key, right? You need to know. And to me, there's sales, there's like support, which is like sort of the operations of the business. And then there's like the development side if you're in tech. There's those three sort of aspects of it. You need to be one of those. You need to be good at one of those. There's one that's already you're gonna kind of lean to and be like, oh, I'm really good with like processes and operations and stuff. And that's how my brain works. I'm great with spreadsheets. I love them. It's like, cool, hone that skill, get better, and then find other people. And don't even like play that down. Like each of those three things is worth 33% of a business, 100%. Because a business does not succeed without one of those things. Trust me, I've tried to start businesses without the support aspect. I've tried to start businesses with just the basic minimum of development and good support and good sales, and it doesn't work. So you just find the one you're sort of leaning towards already, which sales and marketing was me. And then I've just spent my lifetime just slowly getting better at it. And a big part of getting better at it is actually just getting more confident in what you do and the value that you provide to whatever you're going to work with.
Interesting. So you give equal importance to those three things because it seems like I was thinking that sales may be the most important one in that there are a lot of great products, but we never find out about them because they didn't have the sales part.
There's a lot of really heavily marketed things that never sell. And we know that. We see it. Hundreds of millions of dollars can be spent on marketing a new movie or new Coke or something, and they just fall flat because the product is not good. You need all of it. You 100% do. And the 33%, I say that because people have been shocked from the outside. I've had this before because if I'm making a partnership, if I have this idea and I want to put people together to do it, we're going to be partners. And if we're partners, we're literally partners. And one thing, it stifles it if I think as sales that I'm worth 80%, you guys are each worth 10. And I've made this mistake and I've learned from it. And then I fixed it and it's actually flourished way more around it. So what I mean is initially when I would go in and try and put together like a team to build something, being the salesperson, or just I think following sort of how you're thinking right now, Andy, is like, I want to go in and it's like, okay, well, it's my idea. That's worth a whole bunch. It's like, it's not actually, because it's nothing. And there's a million ideas everywhere, every day. But I would go in and be like, okay, so I get 80% of it. You guys each get 10, blah, blah, blah. And it was like, no. But then I would like be able to sell it. I could sell it. And then finally I'd get that contract signed and I'd be like, woohoo, huge win. And then the whole thing would fall apart and never work. And the reason it doesn't work is because those people have equal value within all of this to work. And because they've already feel like they've lost, because they only have 10% stake anyways, none of it works. And nobody puts it all in. Nobody goes all in to make this thing work. Yes, I end up with 80% of something that's worth $10, but I'd actually rather end up with 33% of something that's worth $1 million. It just makes sense, right? It sounds like it doesn't make sense because when you get the contract signed, it can feel like I've already put more into this because I've been thinking about this for 6 months. I've sort of mapped things out. These guys just heard about it. But trust me, on the other side, in 3 months and 6 months and a year and 2 years, you're going to be so like thankful that everybody feels fully invested in this and gets their reward for it because they'll work better, they'll work smarter, they'll work harder, and it will work.
One more entrepreneur question for you. Like when you come up with an idea, is it the concept first, or are you doing the math and trying to crunch the numbers? Like, does this make financial sense?
Depends. If it's a service-based business, I would do some numbers, and I would look like I would do research online and try and figure out like what other people do. And I don't mean like as in like a business plan. I've never written a business plan in my life, but I would look at numbers and I would look at like try and figure out what sort of margins are within that space and then see sort of how I could make that work. And if it makes sense, then I just have to make it work. If that makes sense, it's like riding a bike to me. It's like there's something that clicks in your head when you first start to ride a bike, and you never just start falling off your bike anymore. It just doesn't happen. You just, all of a sudden I know how to do that, and I know how to continue doing this. But if it's a software business, I really don't care too much about the numbers. I care if there actually is a gap in that market, and if there actually are some people interested in it. I typically don't want to create like a first in a marketplace. I want to create in a marketplace that I know people are already spending money because they feel in need and they're spending money anyways, and I want to build something around that. Still filling a gap, but sort of like off to the side of a successful product maybe. But software, if you can either get it built, it's not super expensive to build really simple, like a minimum viable product of a software these days, or to get people together and do it. There's your barrier to entry is fairly low in that sense. And so if I trust that there's a market there, I can play with pricing. Software is really, really cheap to sell. Like if I get 10 subscribers to my software product today, and I get like 100 tomorrow, it's like I make 10 times as much revenues coming in right now, but I don't really have 10 times more work right now. Over the long term and support and all those kinds of things, maybe, but I can really play with cash flow in the sense that I've got money coming in right now, more of it. You know what I mean? It's like, now I need to figure out how to sell 1,000 of them tomorrow. And then it's like, then I have like, it's weirdly like a pyramid in that sense, where you get to like now use the revenue from the 1,000 people to learn how to support the 100 and then just keep growing from there. Service-based to me, it works on smaller margins. Software works on fairly forgiving margins that you just have time to figure out if it's going to work or not. And it's a game of like building it so it's minimum, selling it, seeing if you can start selling some of it, and then getting the feedback and then putting that money into more development to make it better. Because you can only sell so many of a minimum viable product, but if you can sell enough that you're convinced that this is a good place I should be and this product's going somewhat in the right direction, we can sort of redirect it as we need.
Yeah, it's super scalable.
Right. And I've only recently, in the last year, become quite obsessed with spreadsheets and stuff. But I never was before. I would literally just jot things down on a piece of paper, try and figure it out. If I want to build an email software service, I'm going to go out there and look at which ones are out there. And I'm going to see sort of think in my head, or even just write on a sheet of paper, like, okay, I want to build an email product. It's like service provider. It's like, okay, well, MailChimp, their branding's kind of like this, like they're friendly and happy. They fill this market. There's ActiveCampaign. They're kind of more businessy. And then just look for like a gap within that, which is exactly what ConvertKit did. And they're turning into a massive business. There's like the bloggers, the content creators are missed in all of these people. We can basically create the same product, put a different look on it, and market to a different segment, which is the giant, massive gap in the marketplace. That's all they did. I mean, that was started 100% by him. He just started, and for the first 2 years, he made zero money almost and just did it and just iteratively tried to really find that gap. And then once he did, it blew up.
Yeah, massive. Now, I don't know how many customers they service, but it's a lot.
Yeah, it's millions and millions of dollars a month in recurring revenue now.
Coming up, we talk about the importance of building an audience, building a great team, Jonny's podcasting origin story, all that and so much more right after this short break. The show notes for this episode can be found at inspiredmoney.fm/106. If you're listening in your car or wherever you are, check the show notes if you want to learn more about Jonny or things mentioned in this episode. It's time for the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. This week, a client asked me, is a recession coming in the United States? This is a really great question. We're in one of the longest bull markets in history. The bottom was on March 9th of 2009. And volatility is back. We're seeing 2 to 3% moves in a day. And given where the averages are right now, as of this recording, that's 600 to 750 points on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. To see the Dow go down that much in one day can be unnerving. Let me start with a disclosure that this is not advice, just some observations. The data that we look at is not flashing signs of recession. Sure, the yield curve inverted. You've probably seen that in the news. If you don't know what that is, that's when long-term bond yields fall below short-term bond yields. And that rarely occurs, which is why it's a moment that gets attention. Before this month, that section of the yield curve had not inverted since 2007. And I'm sure I do not need to remind you, that was just before the Great Recession. While an inverted yield curve can signal a recession, it's also imperfect and it can be early, as in 9 to 12 months early. So use it as a sign to look for more signs, not to immediately run for the exit. There are conflicting data points right now, though. The good news is that corporate earnings have been okay. The economy is still growing, although it has slowed. The bad news is the trade war with China. Also, European countries' economies are struggling. Those are valid concerns because the US cannot exist in a vacuum. A global slowdown is likely to be felt here at home eventually. Back to the original question about a recession, my answer today is not yet. If you can afford risk, one can argue that valuations are okay here. There are stocks of really solid companies that are inexpensive. If you're retired, though, or cannot stomach short-term losses, you can argue that taking some profits right now to reduce risk is prudent. My tip is this: review your investments and allocation. You have to look at your own situation. Whether or not you make changes, regularly reviewing your portfolio and objectives is a good exercise. That's the Runnymede Money Tip of the Week. Inspired Money is brought to you by Runnymede Capital Management. We help you to plan, invest, and worry less. What's your biggest financial challenge right now? Do you have a money question? If you need help, go to inspiredmoney.fm/Andy, that's ANDY, to email me. Or, even better, schedule a 15-minute call at inspiredmoney.fm/15. We can talk about anything. This podcast, your finances, whatever you'd like. I'd love to chat with you. You're listening to Inspired Money. I'm Andy Wong. Jonny, you've done a lot of stuff because I know that you've done software. You're talking about like the benefits of the scalability. I also know that you have worked one-on-one with clients. Do you have a favorite business right now or favorite format?
Well, I don't own any software right now. That kind of makes me sad, Andy. But I'm not interested in finding any right this moment. But right now, I mean, basically running an SEO agency that we've been doing as an agency for like 6 months now, but working with clients directly for about a year and a half. And I'm loving it. And that was literally like, it was kind of created accidentally. Not the agency part, that was a conscious decision, but I'm loving working with clients, getting to like convert their websites into like things that drive tons of traffic and sales for them. It's really fun. It allows me to test a lot of cool things in a lot of different marketplaces. It allows me to have like really cool relationships. My one client, the first client I had, they're still with me, which is awesome. It's like 18 months. It's really, really cool to see just how they grow and then I grow with them. As you say, like I've done a lot of things and I know I'll do a lot more things. It's kind of just the game that I play. I always want to push things as far as I can push them, but I don't want to like push uphill, if that makes sense. If it was a passion, if it was something that I just had to do, but I'm not going to be one of those people who's just like for 5 years pushing as hard as I can through this thing. And it's not growing and it might even be shrinking. It's like, there's so many opportunities out there. Go do something. It's just more fun to me to go do something that is just easier and it makes you more money and it's therefore more fun to me. So I'm sure I will get back into software, but I mean, it's the reason why I have like a SEO agency now is because I literally was just like I have no offer for it. Nobody even knows that I have it. It was just people from my podcast and the blog, just like every once in a while would just like email me and like, oh man, could you like help me with this? And it was like, no, no, no. And finally I said yes to one person. Then it was like, all right, okay, I'll say yes to another person. And then the person's like, oh, I have this friend, company needs it too. And it's like, oh, geez. That's when it was the conscious decision. My wife and I sat down and was like, okay, well, we could have like another client I can handle and we could just do it like this and make good money. It's fun. Or we could probably turn this into something just because it's obvious that there's a gap because there's no offer for it. And we have as many clients as we can handle. We're not looking for clients. It's just one of those things. And so that was like, here's a boulder and it's already rolling downhill. It's actually chasing me at this point. Maybe I should do this and just see where we could take this because it's kind of cool and fun and it's something different. And I honestly didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I do. There's some goals I have in my head, like a revenue and sales goals I have for software products that I know I can do. And I need to get back to it someday. But I'm not consciously trying to come up with anything that will do that at this point.
The SEO agency, that's less scalable, but much higher margin, right?
Yeah, it's less scalable for sure because it's like I can't get 1,000 customers tomorrow. So it's less scalable in that sense.
It's a higher ticket item.
It's a way higher ticket. Yeah, totally. And I mean, it's just because of the nature of the fact that I have an audience and people asking for the service and we don't need them or can't even take them right now. There kind of gets to be a waiting list. And so it's kind of just, we're in a process of just sort of like, almost like doubling the price each time and just seeing if people will say yes. And so far, nobody said no.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's super fun. But it also, we just are working with different companies, like just bigger companies that just have way more revenue and sales already. And we just need to enhance those for them. And so it's an easier sell. It's like, but it's just interesting to see this new sort of market opening up before me. And it's like, I'm somehow just already in a gap. And I just needed to decide to start doing it. But I really, really enjoy it. Most of my work is just client management, though, and just relationships and sending the right memes and keeping people laughing and having fun and making sure that the team is making their website kick ass.
Jonny, you're the host of the popular Hack the Entrepreneur podcast. You mentioned that it's the podcast and the blog. I know that you're approaching 5 years and you're coming up on 500 episodes. You talk to so many entrepreneurs. The audience aspect, the fact that you have an audience and that you can create an SEO agency today, like after having the audience, it seems like such an important part of running a business in the 21st century, right? It'd be totally different from if you were starting an SEO agency from scratch.
You're exactly right. And it's also the reason why I don't have to think about what I necessarily want to do moving forward, like beyond, say, a year if I don't want, because I could stop doing this and I'm still focusing on the blog. I'm still focusing on the podcast that just grows. And yeah, it's super easy to launch new things off of it. It's like if I find like a software product that I want to build one day that fits my audience, it's like it's not like most people. You're right. I started belonging to a couple Slack groups for SEO and stuff and agency owners and stuff. And I had to leave because it's all people. I want to start an SEO agency. I had one client I want to start. It's like, how do you get clients? It's like, I just how do I filter through people who are reaching out to me and make sure to just talk to only and they're like, how do you do that? Where are these people coming from? And it's like, oh, well, I spent 5 years building an audience. And it's like, it's backwards. You're right to what most people would do. It's like, I want to start this business now. I'll create a product and now I got to find people to buy it. And it's kind of like build it and they will come. And it's like, well, no, not always. So I built the we will come part. And now I just have to decide what sort of products and services I think will fit this market the best.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because I think business owners today, even CEO of a company, they have to think about, how do I build a community? How do I build an audience? That's part of the responsibility today.
Yes, 100%. I mean, it's a reason why I think down in Silicon Valley and California and stuff, you can be a ghostwriter right now for if you're really good and can just talk to a CEO quickly and then do it. I've seen people they're getting paid exorbitant amounts of money to write fairly generic, just blog posts and stuff and publishing them to keep them as like thought leaders. Because one thing the CEO knows, and the other thing is their investors around them know that it's essential. But even taking it back to like people like us, Andy, like with businesses on the smaller scale, I still tell people, and it's like from day one, never make yourself so busy with either clients or with software, whatever it is you have to service, that it takes up more than 80% of your time working. And I don't care if you work 40 hours a week or 20 hours a week or 50, it doesn't matter. Just 80% of your time can be for servicing that exists. But 20% has to be marketing. It has to be sales. It has to be keeping that pipeline just coming in the door. And that doesn't have to be a specific quote unquote pipeline where it's like, I know exactly this because I don't have that. I just know that if I keep focusing on blogging, if I do podcasts like this, if I keep doing my podcast, that it's just inherently there's enough mass people that a tiny fraction of a percentage of those people will want to be clients of mine. It's just how it works. But the problem is like, especially when we're starting, is we get so excited because like, oh my God, I'm so busy that I'm completely filled up. And that's cool until all of a sudden it's like one client drops off, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't have any more people. It's like, exactly, because you stopped the most important function of your business, which is that of today, content marketing, and continually making sure that things are going out to not only keep it going, but actually grow it. Because the more that side of your business grows, the easier everything else gets.
Jonny, you have a pretty cool origin story for your podcast, because it seems like you were a reluctant podcaster out of the gate. You're also an author, and you were like a reluctant author too. Can you share your origin story for the podcast?
Sure. This was like 5.5 years ago now. So I had a software business going. It was doing really well. It was fun. I was like behind the scenes sales and marketing. We got to travel. Like my daughter was young at the time, and so we traveled a lot. It was fun. I could work from anywhere. It sounds dumb now because I work so much with clients. It's fun, but it's different. But I got bored of sitting on the beach. I wanted to get out there, out front. I wanted to start building an audience of some sort. I didn't know it was called that at that point, but I wanted to be more forefront and be more active in doing more. And so at the trail end of a trip to Asia, the last month of the 3 months, we went to the Philippines, and then we went to a small, tiny conference, tropical think tank. There was 20 of us the first year. And so we went, and this was early on. This is 5.5 years ago, right? John Lee Dumas was there. Pat Flynn was there. It was a Chris Ducker show that he was putting on. And so there's all these people who had just started like about 2 years before me podcasting, and it had taken off for them, obviously. Not nearly like it has now, but it was a small, tiny group. And so we had these mastermind days, they were called. And then when it got to me, I was just like, I told them just what I told you guys and what I wanted. And then, of course, John and Pat and Chris were all just like, dude, you have to start a podcast, man, with your Canadian accent and stuff. And you like know all these business people. And I was just like, no. There's like one sort of nightmare I have, and that's hearing myself talk into a recording. I've always hated it. I have a terrible voice, all these things. There's no way. I've never interviewed. No, it's just no. What else is there? And they just kept doing it. And my daughter was there, and she was like, I guess like 7 or something at the time. And her and Pat hit it off. And then so Pat was, of course, all high on podcasting, which he still is, but at the time. So he talked her into maybe starting one too. And so he sent us like the full gear, like the mixer and the mic and everything to our doorstep. So it was there when we got home. And then I stared at it for like 3 months. And then one day we were out at the cottage and I was on the dock and I was just like, screw it. I'm doing it. And I went home that Monday and I emailed Chris Brogan and
it's a good first guest. 2
other people. Yeah. And I ended up interviewing Chris like that Thursday. And I was like freaked out. Like, I have no idea how to do this. I've never interviewed somebody. Whatever, who cares? And I was just like, I'm going to interview 30 people. There's 30 people I immediately came up with that I would love to talk to. I know they won't talk to me unless it's for something content related and marketing related. Podcast does that for them. And then I'm going to do it. I'm going to launch it. I figured the whole mindset angle was the gap. It was everybody was talking like tactics, strategies in like the marketing business space at the time. And I was like, that's cool. I love that. I love you guys do that. But why are these people doing this? How do they think about this? Like, how do they deal with like the struggles of this, things that I'd gone through? And so I was just like, I'm going to go there. And that was my gap. But I was going to launch 30 episodes. And then I was just cool. I was going to go, it was like a summer project. And I was going to go back to software or keep doing software because I had the business at the time. And then it kind of took off like 2 months into it. And I had to make a decision. I was like, I either want to go all in on this for at least 1 year and see just how far I can push it, or I just need to stop and just go focus on software some more. But I didn't. So I sold off the software to my partner and then just went all in. And that was 5 years ago now.
I don't know. I kind of view it similarly. I look at the podcast in like 1 year increments. It's like, all right, am I going to commit for another year?
You kind of have to. With something like that, with blogging, with podcasting, with something with content related, I think to me, there's audio, there's video, or there's text. There's 3 formats that are huge. You shouldn't do them all. But again, it's like knowing if you're operations or sales. It's you can kind of feel within you, okay, I can probably do that one pretty well, more than the other 2. So it's like, okay, go all in on that one. And just, you have to know that this isn't a short-term play. It just doesn't work like that. You need to be willing to do it in like those longer windows. If you give something a year and you go all into it and you don't see any results, then it's like, okay, fine, go to something else. But I see too many people trying, like, I'm going to just start a YouTube channel and I'm going to go hard for 5 weeks. And it's like, what do you want in 5 weeks? Like, seriously, you're not even any good at this yet. Like, you're still terrible in front of the camera. And that's cool because everybody is when they start. I was terrible talking and interviewing people. It's debatable whether I still am, but it's just something that you have to go through. And you can only do that if you're willing to work on those bigger timescales.
How has your show changed in 470 episodes?
In 470 episodes, it's become a lot less about me, even though I'm on the cover. But 2 things. The first 50 episodes, again, I was horrible. And I had this urge to talk too much during it, to interject, to be involved. And as much as they're conversations, a good interviewer like yourself, you're doing it really well, is just ask or say something that like just makes me talk about stuff. And then you just sit there and listen nicely. It's what an interviewer is supposed to do. You're supposed to bring out the best in your guest. I was terrible at that. I don't know why. I didn't have my head right into it, and I hadn't really paid attention to interviewing skills. So that changed, and that changed early on. Then I had a conversation with Seth Godin at one point, and I was kind of struggling with stuff. I had become a quote unquote author at that point and a podcaster, and I wasn't sure. Like it didn't feel right because I still didn't like it was imposter syndrome, obviously. I was aware of it and I wanted to know how to work through it without just like falsely convincing myself. And so we had this conversation. I was just like, well, you write a blog every single day. Like, how do you stay focused? I was trying to have this like great question about how he continues to do that and stay motivated or whatever. He's just like, it's like none of the motivation, none of that. He's like, it's irrelevant. He's like, the blog that I write, it's not my work, John. That's not what I do. He's like, but interestingly enough, that blog enables me to do my work. And I was like, to me, that changed everything. This is something that I even like work with clients on because it's true. We struggle, right? We struggle when we get busy. We can't keep doing this. But to me, it's like you have to figure out what content, what marketing you want to do, what sales you want to do each week, whether that's one podcast episode and one new article on your site, whatever it happens to be. And then that's a baseline. Now you forget that you even have to do that. You have to do it. And it's just like, that's not up for debate. That's just needs to be done. Everything else is your work. And that's what happens around this stuff. And the work, if it gets too busy, some of that work has to go. But this other stuff can't go because that's not your work. That's what enables you to do any work that you want. And the better you get at that stuff, like Seth, is literally he can just do any work. He could work for any company. He could speak on any stage. He can write any best-selling book he wants. He could start a TV show if he wanted, a Netflix show, I'm sure. All because he just does that. And I was of the mind that that was the work, and that because that was a ton of work. And I was just like, it's so hard to do all this work. And he said, that's not the work, John. Don't even worry about that. And that to me changed everything. And that changed how I perceived the show. And I think it made the show better because it felt like a struggle to do that much work all the time. And even though it's quote unquote the same amount of work I have to do, it's not work. That's not the work. So that's when my show changed and became sort of a facilitator of the things I wanted to do. And I've never looked back since then. Does your content creation, the blog and the podcast, does it fit that 80-20 mix that you're talking about? Is that part of the 20% and then you're doing like the 80% work? Yes. I've struggled with it at times, and I'll write in different places because I only have that 20% sometimes. So I might not get to publish to the blog, but I'll publish other places or do other podcasts with people, those kinds of things. Or might have to not put out like a blog post this month even because I want to create like a new program for people or something, which is content to me and which is scalable and gets it out there. Marketing and sales to me are kind of intertwined. If I'm not going to directly focus on marketing and bringing in more audience, then if I'm focusing on like monetizing part of that audience by filling some sort of gap with a product, then to me, that's equal. Because the other thing is, the more you can do of that, the easier it makes you to like turn down other work to make sure that the work only takes up 80% of your week. It's hard when you're struggling and that 80% and you still don't make enough money. And you're kind of like, oh, I need to get rid of this blog post or this podcast episode because I need to make more money right now. And it's like, that sucks. It's a terrible position to be in. And I know. And so it's easy to speak from where I'm at. It's easy for me to say that, no, man, just ignore it. And just you know what I mean? Just create some more content. But you do have to stay focused. Oftentimes, like it was with me, like you have to work a lot sometimes. Like sometimes it's like if there isn't that extra time during the week because that 20% is still taken up, it's like maybe spend all day Saturday for a month, like creating something that's a little bit more scalable or leverageable, like something that I can sell digitally or something that will then make even a little bit of money, which will ease the whole tension. Yeah, you have to stay focused on it. I've seen too many businesses fall apart without it. No, that's great advice for putting it into action and sticking to it. You have to. As much as I'd want to say it's like once in a while you can just let it go, but it's like a habit where as soon as you let it go a bit, it's hard to get going again. Then it hasn't been going for 3 months, and now it literally just starts to fall apart in front of your eyes. And once it does, it's hard to bring back. And then that pressure now is just even greater, right? It's on both sides. It's on the work side and it's on your marketing side. And you make terrible decisions when you're under that kind of pressure. Yes. Well, you're a drummer. So it's like you just have to keep playing. You can't stop. You can't suddenly stop if you get lost. It's like you just keep going and they'll catch up. Exactly. Eventually. So in speaking to nearly 500 entrepreneurs, I'm curious, like, what kind of money mindset have you seen in your interviews? Do entrepreneurs have a unique view of money? I guess it would depend on sort of what kind of entrepreneurs we're thinking of. You know what I mean? Like, because I talk to so many and they're doing completely different things. Like money usually in success in that sense, it kind of becomes just like a commodity of the business, just with like cash flows and stuff, meaning you have to kind of take the importance off of it as like money as it is to you personally. Like, so obviously when you take money out and you're getting paid, then that's personal money and it's totally different. But in a business, it's sort of like a lifeblood of it, just like time is, just like any resources you have, whether that's like people or like technology or anything, it's all finite within it. And you have to sort of treat it like that and not treat it like there's, and I'm talking about like a business that's just like sort of working, functioning, like not, I guess, like a GE or something, right? But like there's no like, well, we need to take off 7% to like long-term investments and stuff. You know what I mean? Like you got to find ways to be making sure your margins immediately when you're either selling your service or not are going to work and you're going to make that much money. And then you need to learn how to get the biggest portion of that whole project, say, like, and I'm talking like from, say, like an agency, SEO agency perspective. If you can work out a deal with somebody, it's this much a month and it's for 6 months, you want to get as much of that whole 6 months in advance because it's cash flow in that sense that obviously it's more valuable to me now than it is to sort of get it doled out. And then you have to obviously manage that, but it's some shift where you have to think about it just as another one of the resources, right? If your technology dies, if all your people just quit today, if the money literally just seized up today, any of those, the whole business is done. You have to do that. And then there's the other side of it, like, especially when you're in sort of the smaller realm, like up to say like $10 million a year kind of thing. There's a real interesting thing, which I don't know if you know about it, but like the profit first philosophy and mentality, and I guess like type of like accounting and booking, like bookkeeping, the way they do it, which is really fascinating and something that we've taken to my mastermind guys have all taken to it. It's really sort of treating it like part of your business like that, but making sure that money is always like twice a month is coming out as profit to the owners and you're getting paid the right amount, and making sure your business is just running efficient at all times. And you're not just, we have a tendency sometimes as like revenues go up to just spend more and more money. And it's like, obviously you need to hire another person here and there, but you don't need a fancier chair or a fancier office or any of those sorts of things just to grow. It makes you keep wraps of that and make sure that you as the business owner are always getting your profit literally first. And then expenses and everything comes around that. It's fascinating. I don't know if you've ever had him on the show.
Who is that? The profit first?
Mike Michalowicz. He was actually on my show, I think like 4 years ago, and I didn't even know what profit first was at that time. And we've only recently adopted it, and it's fascinating. It really changes the way it all works. Like it gets rid of that early mentality of like, I got to reinvest in my business. I got to reinvest. It's like, that's actually just a lie, that you're unprofitable and you think you're reinvesting in your business because that's why you're not getting paid. But really something's wrong. You're either not selling at the right margins or you're spending way too much money on some things. And it literally makes you like twice a month. You literally have to clear out all the accounts and they just have to go into their specific places. This kind of expense, this kind of expense, this kind of expense. And it's like, if you're running, well, you can't run a negative in most of them. And if you do, you got to figure out like, why is this happening? Like why? And then you have to sort of start tweaking things to get to the right percentages. And I say this and I like sometimes argue with people on like Reddit and stuff like that whole, but I'm just reinvesting in your business. It's like, you are not Amazon. Like they're reinvesting, people who are investing cash in them and they're putting it into like building warehouses and stuff. Like that's different than you just not getting paid.
Yeah, server farms.
Right, exactly. Like that's investment that's going to pay for a long term. But this idea of like, well, I just bought this coffee shop and I'm still working a job and I just keep reinvesting all the money and then I'm just going to be able to flip the switch one day and work for it and make all this money. It's like, how do you just flip a switch? And if you can just flip a switch and become profitable, why don't you flip that switch today? It's like, well, I can't exactly because there's something wrong within it. And so you need to figure that out, or else it just tells you that this business doesn't work. This gap you think you're filling actually isn't profitable, and you should just probably go to another business.
I have to check out that book. So for you, since you're a guy who got tired of sitting on the beach and you've been involved in many different businesses, how do you define success?
Control. Success is 100% about control. Control of where we live, control of my time, control of how much money I want to make, control of my day, control of what I'm going to do next week or what I'm going to do next year. That's it. some big book house approached me and were like, we need like this thing from you. We want to blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, cool. So I came up with this idea and it needs to be reworked for them for some reason. But I was trying to figure out what this is, like what ultimately drives us to build stuff and to become unemployable. Because there's a lot of, it's not the easy way, like at all. But still, there's a reason why we're driven to it and what it is. And so I started like going through conversations I've had on the show and just like talking to friends. And then I came to it myself, was just like, it's just control, man. I'm a control freak, like in a good way. But it's like I said, like I want to be in control when everything falls apart and like bankruptcy happens. I want to be in control of that. When it's like you sell a business for $10 million, I want to be in control of that. I want to be in control of it when we just barely made it this week. I just want control. And then I've started bringing this up now on the show with people, and it's such a thread. And it seems to be like, if you follow the whole Toyota 5 whys, almost every entrepreneur will seem to have different reasons. But then you ask why? Like, why do you want that? Well, because of this. Okay, well, why that? Oh, because of this. Well, why that? Well, because I want control of it. It's like, there it is. That's all it is. And so to me, when I have control of every aspect of my life, like, obviously life totally throws stuff at you every single day that you have no control over. And I accept that about life. But in the things that are controllable, I want control. And sometimes my control actually, Andy, is accepting the fact that there isn't any real control over even aspects of my business. It's like, I mean, economies change, like recessions hit, things happen. That's cool. Like I'm not like a control freak in that sense. And I think most people wouldn't even ever look at me like I was a control freak because it doesn't seem like it. I'm pretty loose and easygoing, but I think that's success. Somebody can't tell me what to do, man.
I love that motivation. Well, thank you for sharing your time and your lessons and experiences with us. Can you tell the Inspired Money listener how to follow you, listen to Hack the Entrepreneur, where to find you?
Yeah, for sure. hacktheentrepreneur.com. It's the site. There's a blog over there where we do some writing. There's a podcast on there. You can get onto the email list and check out some of our stuff. You can reply to an email if you wish, and I'll probably reply. And I'll try my best, is what I mean. And then for social media or something, Twitter, Jonny Nastor is the best place to find me for any social media. You can track me down there if you want to ask any questions. I'm more than happy to have a conversation on Twitter.
Well, thank you, Jonny. I am a fan of Hack the Entrepreneur. It's a great podcast. So I am a listener. So what was your favorite Inspired Money moment? Two things really stood out to me. Jonny's advice to evenly divide ownership to key members of your team, to keep the right people in key roles fully incentivized. It makes sense, but it's easier said than done. The second thing is the importance of building and cultivating an audience. Jonny built his audience first through his Hack the Entrepreneur blog and podcast. This opened the door to all kinds of opportunities. Doing it that way seems counterintuitive, but we see the importance of audience building. Thank you so much for joining me on this mission. Are you in the Inspired Moneymakers Facebook group yet? If not, join us at inspiredmoney.fm/Facebook. If you like this episode, please let me know. Post in the Facebook group or tweet me at RunnyMeadCap. That's RUNNYMEDECAP. Even more importantly, if there was anything you didn't like, let me know. I want to produce the best show possible, so I welcome your feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. Lay it on me. Thank you so much, and I look forward to you joining me next week. The music you're listening to right now and all other music on today's show is by the amazing Jim Kimo West. Have an inspired week and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.